Hello. Thank you for being with us today. My name is LaNissir James. I am the Executive Director of MACHE, the Maryland Association of Christian Home Educators, and we are thrilled today to have what we call a Maryland Homeschool Freedom Talk. And we have invited some amazing guests. I just call them all dynamic, and you are going to be so excited to hear them and hear their take on all things going on in Maryland. And we want to thank you for being there. So please tag your friends, let them know that we are live on our MACHE page. We welcome you to like our MACHE page, friend our MACHE page, and visit us at machemd.org. We really encourage you to just get connected. You know, one of the things that I posted is about John Maxwell. I said that communication is really about connections, about having conversation. And so that's what we're doing today with some phenomenal people. We're just having some great conversation. What I want to bring up first is I want to just add to the stage a little bit about what we're doing in MACHE. If you're trying to reach our website, it's machemd.org. That's MACHEMD.org. If you don't put the MD, you'll go to our friends in Minnesota. So I encourage you to go to machemd.org. And we have 4 fun things coming up for you. We have our MACHE ambassadors. We'll send you more information about our ambassadors. We're looking for young people who would love to go up to the Capitol and meet some of our legislators. And so we're excited about the MACHE ambassador team. Our Capitol Day is coming up quick in March. We have our graduation coming up as well in May, and our convention, which is called Blossom in Faith. We welcome you to all of it, and you can see more at machemd.org. And we're very, very excited. And so what I want to do is I want to bring all of our guests up at the same time. This is so exciting. I'm going to bring all 3 of our guests up at the same time. And then we're going to hear from them individually. So we're going to bring them on the stage. I want you to pretend that they're live and they're walking on the stage, except it's kind of like it's a digital walk, if you will. So the first person I want to walk up to the stage, who we absolutely love, is Delegate Arikan. Delegate Arikan is from Harford County, District 7, Harford County, and Baltimore County. We love her because she has been such a supporter of all things homeschooling. I want to introduce to some and present to others. Delegate Arikan, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to see you, and thank you for your love and support of homeschooling always and forever. And then the next gentleman I want to bring up, he's a pastor. His name is Gary Cox, but he's also one of the original founders of MACHE many, many years ago. So when you get a chance to hear him individually, you'll hear so much of his input to why we're even here today. I want to introduce to some and present to others, Gary Cox. How are you, sir?
Just fine. Good to be here, and fine to see Delegate Arikan again. How are you?
It's been a while. Good to see you again.
This is exciting. And if it couldn't be more exciting, I am so excited about our next person that I want to bring up on the stage. You guys have seen him. His work in the state of Maryland has just been unprecedented. We love him. He's our Maryland attorney. We love him from HSLDA. I want to present to some and introduce to others the awesome Will Estrada. Hey, Will.
Thank you, LaNissir. It's a privilege to be here with this all-star lineup.
This is exciting. So we're going to jump right to it. And I'm going to pull Will off the stage and Gary Cox on the stage, and you'll hear from them just in just a moment. And we're very excited for you to get a chance to hear a little bit about what Delegate Arikan has to say about all things homeschooling. Now, I want to set a context for you, Delegate Arikan, and for all those who are listening. Basically, around the summer between May and I guess it was May through August 15th, right? May 15th to August 15th. There was a public comment section, and it was just basically the MSDE, the Maryland State Department of Education, was in the process of reviewing homeschool law. That's the COMAR 13A.10.01. And you guys did a phenomenal job of sending your comments. You sent your comments in to the tune of 2,500 comments. That is amazing. And most of the comments were saying that we did not want to see changes in the Maryland homeschool regulation. And that was great. And so what we found is, as we're moving forward and they're kind of going down their timeline, there are 2 matters that are open now that they are looking at, perhaps making some amendments, repeal. That's the section that Maryland homeschooling instruction is listed in. And I know Delegate Arikan has a lot of those details, but I just kind of want to, for the context of everyone who is watching, I want them to know what the issue is. I think initially when we were sending the 2,500 comments, we were just saying, hey, don't change our homeschool law, right? Now we're looking into some of the specifics, and we just want you to have the important details. I think that's the important part about having a great conversation. You need to know what the conversation is about, right? And so one of them is a technical amendment, and I'm reading verbatim too. A technical amendment to the chapter would close a loophole which allows parents to enroll their student in the local educational agency, that's your local school, for a day, and then withdraw them immediately and then resume homeschooling on the same day or the next day, which was previously been found insufficient. So someone who's been found insufficient. So that's the first matter that they're looking at. And then the second one is about the supervising non-public schools or institutions. We call them umbrellas, in terms of verifying to the local school district the identification of homeschool students whose instruction is continued under their supervision. A clarifying amendment would address the fact that although the regulation says annually, and that's in quotes, it doesn't say when. Doesn't say August 30th, September 30th, or some certain date. So those are the two areas. And again, we just want to kind of open the conversation. And I want Delegate Arikan just to take 90 seconds. Tell us a little bit about why you love homeschooling, a little bit about the people you serve, and then we'll jump right into it.
Yeah, great. So yeah, thanks for going over that stuff, and thanks for having me. I have been homeschooling since my now 18-year-old, who I've graduated, was in first kindergarten. I started in kindergarten. She went to preschool, and I thought that's just not for us. And then I pulled her out. And so I've been homeschooling for a very long time, and I have 4 children. So I'm very committed to it. I also typically practice a kind of unusual, it's called unschooling. And so, it's kind of the hippie version of homeschooling. So I am very invested in maintaining the laws as they are in Maryland, so that we can make sure that all different types of homeschooling methods and styles are protected under the law. Because I think that there's a lot of different ways that kids can learn. Some of my kids do really well with bookwork, and some of them really don't. So I like to maintain that flexibility.
I love that. Did you want to share a little bit more about unschooling? Give people who may not be familiar with what that is.
Sure. Yeah. Unschooling is essentially like child-led education. So, for example, I would ask my children, I almost like you're the librarian, you ask your children what they're led to focus on, and it allows them to focus on things that they have an aptitude for. So you essentially sort of piece together their education in a way that's directed by them to essentially create intrinsic motivation. Most of us were raised with extrinsic motivation, checking off a list, accomplishing goals. They were all external goals that were given to us, and we essentially have a false reward system that were created for us when we went to school. I was not homeschooled, where you do this and you get a reward, or you get a punishment if you don't do it. That's the kind of structure. With unschooling, you don't have any of that. It's very much child-led. It's resource-based. You find the resources that match with your children's aptitude and what they are gifted in or what they're interested in. And so the timeline for them learning things looks different. So like my daughter, my 18-year-old was completely unschooled. She started at community college when she was 16. She tested into community college at 16. I didn't force her to learn anything. I gave her kind of like a smorgasbord to look at. And I'm like, what makes sense for you? What do you feel drawn to? And she would pick the things that she felt drawn to. And because we had fostered that intrinsic motivation, she was motivated to learn. She never got to the place where I got in my education, where I was like, I don't want to learn anything else. Don't put anything else in my brain. I'm done, And so she was able to, when she was 14, take classes in law and things that she was really interested in. So the idea is essentially you're fostering intrinsic motivation so that your children will have a lifelong love of learning, and they won't get burnt out or, beat down by the system like what I experienced in public school.
I love that. I love that. So how does that tie to some of the things that MSDE is looking at now in terms of being insufficient? I think we can start with that part. Is there a part about that language that concerns you at all?
Yeah. So my worry with both of the things that they're suggesting, first of all, with the parents who have been reviewing with the county and then the county says they're insufficient, I think all of us have heard stories. I mean, I run an umbrella, so I've definitely had stories where families have had overzealous county employees who are claiming they are, not sufficient when the parent comes in with a massive binder full of evidence that their child is making progress. Now, we don't have to prove to the county what our children are learning, but that our children are learning and that they are going in the right direction. And so, I think all of us know at least one person who's had a bad experience with somebody who really wasn't following the current state laws on how to review homeschoolers. I'm sure it's, kind of a thankless job that nobody really wants, but they get in there and now here a teacher is having to review homeschooling lessons in many cases, and they're just not a fan of it. So I don't like the idea of essentially putting some kind of punishment in place for a parent who was very likely erroneously found to be, in my experience, found to be insufficient, forcing them to go back into the school system and then somehow preventing them from leaving again. That feels like a loss of autonomy for the parent. So that piece definitely concerns me. And then the other one, sort of identifying a date that someone needs to be enrolled by. I'm certainly not afraid of saying, okay, most people should be enrolled by, September 1st. Maybe it's the date where they count butts in public school. It's like, the first week of October or something like that. I think that's when they count students or whatever. I'm certainly not afraid of that, but we have to make sure that there is leeway there so that families who are in the public school system whose kids mid-year are not being properly educated are not then forced into county review, sometimes with the very same people they're having issues with, who don't have their child's best interests at heart like the parent does, and not permitting them to then later enroll into an umbrella of their choosing. So I think possibly on that piece, there's a way for us to craft something so that it protects everybody and it really doesn't do very much harm on that second one. But the first one, that's to me, it feels like an attempt to punish bad parents who, in most cases that I've seen, are doing a wonderful job,
Right.
but they got a county reviewer that doesn't know how to do their job.
Right. And also there are parents who start this journey of homeschooling and find out about maybe the 7 different subjects that they need to address that's written in our COMAR, and they're overwhelmed, right? I remember when I started homeschooling over 20 years ago, and I'm not the art person. I mean, we didn't color, cut, and paste anything. I was so worried about math, right, and science that when the reviewer asked me for art, I was like, fine arts? I was like, fine arts?
Yeah.
And because they're weighed the same, right? And
Right.
and that review process, right? So you could be doing phenomenal in math and you forget to, have evidence of your PE or so on and so forth. So we would hope that the law is written that they have 30 days if they've been seen insufficient, that they have 30 days to get, in compliance. And then if that doesn't happen, they have to go into school. But I think one of the concerns is that people have been enrolling them in school and then taking them out the next day. So it feels to me a little bit too like, that there's going to be, hey, you can't come right back out where you're kind of stuck in jail. That kind of piece is a little bit concerning. And, of course, we want to hear from you. I mean, parents, this is going to affect, many of, particularly new homeschoolers more than anyone who may not be as familiar of the system and how it works. And so, we're here just trying to have a conversation to talk about it. And I know that there were many comments sent in for the initial, hey, I just don't want homeschooling to change. But if there are going to be some changes, it's so important that people speak up. There's a timeline that it's in place that we saw that the MSDE did put out where they said public comments were open in October and they close in December. We have yet to be able to get the specific dates or where to send the comments. We only have the comment information from what we previously used. And we encourage people to use that information to, give your feedback. And this is just one perspective of it. We're going to hear from our other guests, and that will be great. Tell us anything more you think homeschoolers need to know, and ways that you want to be able to support homeschoolers.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that the laws that we have today, I think are amazing. And I know that Pastor Cox had a huge role in getting us homeschooling. We did not have homeschooling before him, and his friends and loved ones that helped accomplish that. So just a huge shout out to the success of those that came before us. But they created policies that I think are really good and they work really well. I actually have never heard of a case of somebody enrolling their child for one day. I've never met a single person who's done it or tried. I've met many people who have had bad homeschool reviewers who just looked at these beautiful binders with these intelligent, articulate children and said, "Oh, yes, you didn't do enough science this year. Yes, I know, but my child, built this giant computer model. So can that count?" No, that doesn't count as science. It's only math. You know what I mean? Like, that is unacceptable, especially in a state where the arts are actually being cut from most public schools, many public schools. In fact, my girlfriend who homeschooled her kids, she just put her kids in public school for the first time ever. And they have still not had a single social studies course, not a single one yet this year. And the teacher said, because it's a split class where it's either science or social studies, that she's punishing the kids for their bad behavior by not teaching social studies this year. So I don't want to hear it, frankly, from the county reviewers that we aren't doing enough, when that's the kind of stuff that if I had to send my children to school, they would be dealing with. They wouldn't be getting any social studies curriculum because of a few bad apples in the class are unruly. So that's kind of why my opinion on everything is we need to maintain things as they are. We have a wonderful system in place. It's very unusual. I've literally never seen somebody, myself, and we have hundreds of people in our organization, ever misuse the system. So to me, this feels a little bit like what happens a lot in Annapolis, which is a solution that's looking for a problem that may not really exist, may not really be a big problem. And also, you can't legislate to the super minority. You actually can't legislate or promulgate rules trying to fix one or two people. And that's not reasonable. The rest of us don't need to go along for that ride because maybe one or two people through the years have misused something. So, and I did notice in the public comments, you probably noticed this too, that the only people that complained about the homeschooling laws was the teachers union directly. That was it. Everybody else wrote in really thoughtful comments that, keep things how they are or whatever. But the teachers union didn't like how homeschooling was being handled. And so now here we are. Oh, one person, one squeaky wheel, the union complained, and now we've got to consider some alternatives. So I've got a lot of thoughts on it, but mostly my thoughts are we have great policies. The people that came before us worked really hard on them. They protected all different types of homeschooling families. And this feels more like a solution looking for a problem to me.
I love it. I love it. Delegate Arikan, we're going to bring you back up at the end so that you can kind of pose your final thoughts on that. So we're going to put you backstage in just a second, and we're going to bring you back up in a minute. And if you have questions for Delegate Arikan, please make sure put your comments, your questions and comments in the chat. Our MACHE Com team is watching the chat. And yes, the viewing will be available later. And we're also going to be making it available on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much, Delegate Arikan, for your feedback and your opinion. And we just want you to stand tight, and we're going to bring you back up in just a moment. Without further ado, I'd love to bring up Gary Cox, Pastor Gary Cox. And Delegate Arikan really said some really nice things about you, about how you were instrumental as to why Maryland homeschooling is unfolding the way it is. And I got to have you introduce yourself, give everybody a little backstory about some of the things that you've done here in Maryland.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate being invited on. And yes, my name is Gary Cox. And quick history. So I taught in Christian schools in Maryland for 10 years, over a 10-year period. And my children were approaching, well, I had one child approaching third grade and one entering into kindergarten. And at that time frame, I bumped into homeschooling through a Christian school conference. And as I listened to the opportunities and what the solutions were, it was put on by a Christian school organization. And I just realized this is really what my second born son needed. And so by the end of that conference, I was committed to homeschooling our own children, which is an awkward thing. I'm teaching in a Christian school and I'm suddenly going to be taking my children out of the Christian school and homeschooling them. So that was at the beginning. And when we did that, we were very aware of Maryland law. And so we were aware that Maryland law provides for churches, the law says bona fide church organizations, to operate an educational institution in the K-12 genre. And with that declaration, that church-operated entity is free from the regulations of the State Board of Education. And basically all you need to do is give them notice of that your existence and what years you're taking. There's a couple other laws that actually relate to the Christian schools that are exempt from Maryland regulations. And those are things like how you keep your transcripts and making sure that if you have students who are non-performing, that if you can't solve the problem, then you turn them over to the county to try to solve the malattendance, or they call it maladjusted attendance for those students. So that's basically the big backdrop. But for the big picture, and I want to speak to the whole concept of liberty. When we started our program, our church, very small church still is, and we were going by the law in starting a Christian educational program exempt from the state of Maryland. And when I first filed, I got shellacked. I remember the representative, not representative, but the individual in charge of the non-public schools, Adolphus Spain, he pulls open a file cabinet and he takes out 6 folders, and he had 6 unschoolers who were filing as churches in order to have an education program. And he simply said to me, well, what you're doing is fine, how you're doing it, but it creates a loophole for other people like these to sneak through and not have legitimate educational license. So at that point, I was introduced to unschooling. Manfred Smith was the one that was in charge of that particular group, MHEA, and they had an attorney who was going through the proper processes to establish these schools. So, Delegate Arikan's comment is that, they're trying to micromanage legislation for the extreme minority instead of for the regularity. And I would simply say that has been the entire history of Maryland's homeschool regulation, panicking and worrying about an individual that may bend the rules a little bit, whether they're real or imagined. It's possible that they're real, but they're like a small number. And so they're trying to eliminate these issues and problems. And so one of the things historically that happened was, as we were able to persuade the state with respects to our own program, I remember the Baltimore Sun printing an article where the then Ellen Heller Attorney General Rep on the Board of Education said, well, we're having a little bit of problem with these people that are running these homeschool programs because they know the law really well. And it was like, well, how is that a problem? We're trying extremely to keep in context. So I just want to go to that point a minute, because there's 2 parts of our liberty. We have our American social liberties that are afforded to all. I used to think it was to all citizens, but apparently it's to the whole world, if you can just get here legally or not. But anyway, we have these rights and privileges as citizens. But then at the same time, when you look a little deeper, what we have is this incredible heritage at the founding of America, that there's been a strong sensitivity to religious practice, religious conscience. And so what happened at the turn of the last century, in the early 1900s, they started mandating public schools, regular thorough instruction, whatever you want to call it, was being required by law across the country. And so in that context, the reality is there were institutions and schools that different states were denying the right to their academic program that prior to those laws had existed for years. So in the context of that, then we had Wisconsin versus Yoder and the Pierce sisters versus Nebraska. That Supreme Court ruling kind of established a premise of education law, and it basically said, well, the state needs to be able to guarantee that the citizens that are raised in homes, that they don't fall onto the government platform as needing or requiring assistance. And so it's like, oh, you're saying you want to raise responsible adults that know how to take care of themselves. Okay, so that's the basis of education. So when you go to that's a huge platform, because ultimately all education law comes from that premise as far as what can be protected. So if the education you're bringing your child is going to bring them to a place where they actually are independent, well-functioning citizens, then you've met the standard of the Supreme Court. So as a new believer and homeschooler, I asked my wife the question. Of course, we were imagining our kids being taken from us. We have 10 kids. We homeschooled them all and graduated them all. Now I'm graduating. We have some 53 grandchildren, and most of them are in our program. And so we're continuing the heritage. That was my original thought to my wife. I said, well, I'd like our program to last long enough so at least our grandkids can attend. So we're seeing a robust part of that. But anyway, getting back to the question, what is the role of education and the believer? And so pulling back from the state, what we have in terms of liberty, all American liberty came from people willing to die for their sincerely held religious beliefs. And so Christians have the most potent form of resistance available, because we'll love not our life to the death. We're going to follow our conscience before God and trust him with the outcome. And so that being the case, I just asked my wife, well, at what point are we going to allow the state to take our kids from us, knowing that they potentially could? And so that forced me to ask the question biblically, okay, what does the Bible require with respect to raising kids? So we happened upon 1 Thessalonians 4, 11, and 12. And there's only two places in the King James Version that the word study appears. One's in one's in that 1 Thessalonians passage. It says, study to be quiet. Well, study to be quiet actually is translated properly is make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. So you have this incredible motive driving from within. I'm going to lead a quiet life. I'm going to mind my own business. I'm going to work with my hands. I'm going to take care of my own needs. And there's two things that's going to happen. I'm not going to be dependent on anybody. That's the first thing, individual independence. And secondly, I'm going to have a good testimony to those that are out. People are going to look at me and say, wow, what are you doing? How are you doing it? So that being the primary case, I said, well, we don't need compulsory attendance laws to form our education experience for our kids, because we have an obligation before God to raise them up so that they can be well-functioning, impactful citizens in the world that we live in. So that being the case, I simply asked the question, okay, well, how can I conduct education? And in Maryland, the simple reality is Maryland law has provided since the early 1900s an exemption for people of faith to have their religious organization form an academic program, and then that academic program is totally free and exempt from any Maryland regulation. So when it comes down to curriculum and those kinds of things, it's completely off the cart. You can't touch it. So when we started our program, the state was concerned that all kinds of programs are going to pop up all over the place. And their number one opposition was, well, you're doing a great job, but there's going to be others that use it for a loophole. So actually, believe it or not, the foundation of MACHE occurred because the State Board of Education told me, well, you better work hard to let everybody know what the law is, because if people do it like you, they're fine. But if not, we're going to have a problem. So what that actually became was an excuse for them to not really promote the legitimate educational concerns that they had opportunity for, and instead to just kick the can and And I felt like, well, they're hoping for some kind of failure. So initially what happened was amazing, because the interviews that folks had with different county superintendents, et cetera, they were so positive. And so I was in a meeting once with the Board of Education, all the counties who were doing these homeschool reviews, and it was an amazing event. If the individual representative had never met a homeschooler, they had these huge stories of deleterious behavior and what terrible things are going to happen, but they'd never met a homeschooler. On the other hand, you had these people who had actually been reviewing homeschool students, and they said, well, that's just not the way it is. And they listed the positive impact of these well-meaning, well-serving parents. And so at that point, the testimony of true homeschoolers has really helped the homeschool program stick tight in Maryland. So getting back to the issue at hand, what's going on with these regs, I have a couple quick comments. And I think the first comment I'd like to refer to is just the, there's the section 4 and then the section 5 parts of the regulation. And I think that there's a couple, then they kind of relate, but this whole idea of this 30-day opportunity to resolve a problem, and then if you can't resolve it, then you're going to have to put your kid back. First of all, it's not true that you have to put your child back in a public school. Maryland's compulsory attendance law simply states that a child must attend public school or receive regular thorough instruction in the same subjects taught in public school. So that regulation, that code is significant. So if you look in Maryland law, you either go to public school or you're receiving regular thorough instruction in a number of venues in a number of ways. So the bottom line is regular thorough instruction. How do you define that? So if you have your family being reviewed by the county, I'm going to make a couple quick suggestions. First of all, when you choose that option, be thoughtful. Why are you doing that? What is your purpose and what is your option? Because the reality is you don't have to have the county review your program. If you have another legitimate program, a church-operated program, review your program, then you're exempt from the county oversight and scruples. And so just a little illustration, the regulation says, in terms of homeschooling, you quoted earlier, there's 7 subjects you got to teach. Did you know that's not true of private schools, of the non-public schools, of the church-operated programs? The law literally quotes that you have to teach, I'll read it here, English, arts, math, science, and social studies, plus other courses that are appropriate. So what you have is, if you're going to use the county regs, what happens is the county is going to go by the county curriculum. And I've seen some incredible overstepping. Way back a long time ago, there was a Cheryl Battles case that she refused to be in an umbrella. She refused to let the county review her program. She simply said, I'm doing it and you can't tell me I'm not. So she got taken to court, and so she did a $30,000 portfolio review before the judge. And the amazing thing that happened was, when she was there before the judge, the county was requiring her to procure and produce all these things that the public school classroom provides. And now she was able to produce all those things, but the whole point of it is, that's not what the law says. You don't have to do what the public school classroom does. You have to teach the basic subjects. So if you want to have the maximum amount of freedom, then what you need to do is participate in the educational opportunity provided through church-operated educational programs. And so I know the state has dubbed them umbrella schools, and there's all kinds of umbrella schools out there. But I think it's still pretty true that around only 50% of the homeschoolers in Maryland use umbrellas, and the rest are using their local county. So, the positive benefit with the local county has been good testimonies on occasion. But when there's abuse, here's the problem. You brought it up. There's a 30-day issue to resolve. And what problem are you going to resolve? What's the nature of the accusation? And so I want to explain that Maryland law says regular thorough instruction in the subjects. It doesn't talk about the curriculum. It says the regular thorough instruction. So that's the component that you demonstrate from your philosophy, whatever. So in respects to alternative types of education, I believe that it's much wiser to establish those under an organizational umbrella operated by religious and educational institution, and codify that, explain it, and maintain your freedoms to the max. So bottom line is that amendment going to fix something? Well, okay, there probably has been maybe half dozen people that have used that as a loophole. That's legalese, people trying to find the shortest cut. But in reality, the big picture, the understandable picture is that there's a problem that needs to be resolved, and you have 30 days to resolve it. So what I'm going to suggest is be careful and know what the problem is there and what the accusation is. And there may come a time, if you're going to use the local county and they're going to overreach and overstep your rights, you better be prepared to have an attorney group like HSLDA ready to back you up. And I'm going to recommend highly, and do not ever allow the county program, county curriculum, to be used as a comparison for your child. Don't ever do that, because that's not the law. And when you're looking at the law, the state can only require something. And what they require, whatever the most minimum thing is, which is what they're doing for non-public schools, that's the maximum that they can require. They can't come in and invent all other kind of things that you have to keep. So maximum freedom is maintained with staying within the freedom line, which is being a part of an umbrella program. And then concerning the umbrella notification rule, I think the county would love to have everybody, the state would love to have everybody with the counties by the 30th of August or 31st of August. From the beginning, we negotiated this process in the beginning, and I simply told the state, and the counties have all complied. We use a classic calendar. So Labor Day begins school year, Memorial Day ends the school year. So the extra days in June and the extra days in August that are part of the classic public school curriculum are not ours. We stick to the classic old time school calendar, get 180 days in there. And so we don't have the ability to finalize our final enrollments until the 25th of September. So we've complied. We've actually told them the date, and we've complied that, we'll get it to you by the 25th of September. So we've never had any complaints or problems along the way. But we do have issues where if we have our program's a little bit different, because we've organized as an educational institution. And so in 2019, the state of Maryland finally recognized, okay, our basic academy program is not a homeschool program. It's a regular private school. So if you're enrolled in our academy program, you're not a homeschool student technically, even though you're teaching at home. But we do have an umbrella program that we have for students that are at entry level that want to have a supervisor program but not be a part of our academy program with transcripts, et cetera. So with that, I'm simply saying it's a realistic business need that the county gets notified in a reasonable way. What was originally agreed upon in the discussions that we had way back with now Attorney General Valerie Cloutier, the agreement was, okay, we'll get you your list by the end of September, because that's when the counties have to have all their lists resolved. And then in the course of the school year, we'll add any students that get added to us as we within a 30-day period. So we've had that operationally. However, it's been professional agreement, and apparently what's happening is some of these umbrellas are not aware or complying or whatever, and so they're just trying to create that little point of force that get it in sooner than later. So I'm certainly going to fight for a September 25th deadline, not an August 31st deadline, simply because our enrollment's not going to be finalized till then. Right. So that's as much as I have time to say, isn't it?
I love it. Yes, you're amazing. Just a wealth of knowledge and information. And we thank you for, that you allowed the Lord to use you to start something like MACHE. And here we are 35 plus years later. So I want to say thank you to you.
42 years.
42. Thank you, sir.
This is the
42.
42nd year. Yep.
And what I'm going to do, Gary, is I'm going to take you off stage and I'm going to bring up Will Estrada, and then I'm going to bring everybody up at the end. And so without further ado, thank you so much. If you stand by, I want to bring up the awesome Will Estrada from HSLDA, that's Homeschool Legal Defense Association. And so here's Will. How are you, Will? Thank you so much for being here, sir.
LaNissir, it is wonderful to be with you. Thank you so much for having me and for this all-star lineup that you've had. I've been learning, listening to Delegate Arikan and Gary as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, Will, we want you to give us your 90-second, why homeschooling. You're not just a Maryland attorney and a senior counsel at HSLDA. You have skin in the game. You have homeschoolers at home with you as well. You want to tell a little bit about your story?
So I'm a homeschool graduate. My parents began homeschooling myself and my 7 siblings. I'm the oldest of 8 children, first in upstate New York in the 1980s, and then in the 1990s until I graduated in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So I was homeschooled K through 12. I went to Oak Brook College of Law. I came to HSLDA in 2004. I started as a paralegal, worked my ways through the ranks. I did all the federal lobbying for homeschool legal defense, went into the federal government for some years in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in the Office for Civil Rights, and then returned back to HSLDA in 2023. So I've been here for many years. It's my privilege to serve Maryland homeschool families as a homeschool graduate and also as a homeschool parent. My wife and I homeschool both of our kids in Northern Virginia. We're in Western Loudoun County, so we're only a couple miles from the Maryland state line.
I love that. I love that. Well, I know you are always well studied, Will, and you know exactly what's at stake here. And we just want to kind of get HSLDA's your take about where things are going. You've been very, very, very instrumental in us having webinars and keeping Maryland homeschoolers abreast to what's going on and what's on the horizon. And we really appreciate HSLDA for all of the work that they do, not only in Maryland, but nationwide. So we would love to hear from you.
Well, thank you, LaNissir. As our frequent viewers will remember, we've been discussing these proposed COMAR regulations since really May of this year. And I'm going to eat a little bit of humble pie here because I did not think, and I believe I had said this previously, that there would be any proposed changes to the regulations. I felt strongly that this was just the regular 8-year review of the COMAR regulations. Not going to go through the history. I think Gary did a tremendous job of explaining that Maryland law passed by the legislature has long said that children need to receive regular, thorough instruction. And that's really all that the statute says. So the COMAR regulations really flesh that out. They are not statute. They are created by Maryland State Department of Education. So it's part of the regulatory process. Technically speaking, legislators like Delegate Arikan don't work on this at all. It's the unelected bureaucrats at Maryland State Department of Education. But of course, our legislators are critically important because they are over the Maryland state government. So when this first came out, when we saw it in the Maryland Register in May, there was concern of, is this kind of an excuse to go and change the COMAR regs, or is it pretty standard? And we submitted public comments. You and I, LaNissir, both went and testified in person before the Maryland State Department of Education in August at their meeting. And at that time, we were told by the MSDE staffers that there weren't going to be any proposed regulations, that this was just reviewing and then they'd close it out. So I was quite surprised and somewhat troubled to see that there are some discussions now of proposed regulations. And as it's previously been discussed, it looks like it's going to be pretty minor, just a date when umbrellas need to report the enrollment. There is a requirement that umbrellas report enrollment, but there's no date for when that is. So there are of course, the efficient, well-run umbrellas usually will send that in about the time that school starts or by September. But there are some umbrellas where it's a volunteer administrator and sometimes it's months. I've even heard sometimes of them getting it in at the start of the new year, which is probably not the best practice. It's a kind of little sidebar here. If you are the administrator for an umbrella for homeschool families in Maryland, it's a critically important role. You are basically the shield for the homeschool families, and I cannot underscore enough the importance that administrators and staff of umbrellas hold when protecting homeschool families. So we have a lot of guidance that we give to umbrella administrators and staff. You can reach out to me as well and reach out to HSLDA. We're happy to give guidance and work with our umbrellas. But as it's been discussed, it looks like one of the proposed changes is that date. And then the other one would be if a family is found deficient and they don't address those deficiencies, then they can't just put their child for one day in a public school and then put their children in homeschool. On that one specifically, I will say I've never had that. There has never been an HSLDA member who was found deficient and then we were unable to help them and get back into really where they need to be with their homeschool program. So I guess it has happened in the past, or else this wouldn't be considered a loophole, but I have never seen it personally. None of our staff, none of our attorneys for at least 3 decades have ever seen that here in Maryland. And I think it really goes to underscore that if you are addressing these issues, if you're working with HSLDA, then you're not going to get it. But it is why I tell families, if you are under portfolio review, take those reviews seriously. If ever a reviewer mentions a deficiency, come and let us know immediately, because we want to get that remedied very quickly. Real quick, and then I'll wrap up. There are no proposed regulations or proposed changes at this time. There will have to be a new, what's called notice of proposed rulemaking. It will be published in the Maryland Register. We will send out the link. There'll be public comments that will be filed. So at this point, we just know that there's a discussion of here are what we're thinking of doing. There's going to be an MSDE vote, may have already happened, to approve this staff report. And then we expect to see either later this year or more likely early in the new year, the notice of proposed rulemaking. And then that really starts the regulatory process all over. One final thing to note is, of course, in January, the Maryland legislature comes back. So we could potentially be looking at a situation of where we are watching legislation, you're having to go and testify on bills, and at the same time, file written public comments if it appears that the regulations go beyond what they've been discussing and are significantly curtailing in any way homeschool freedom. So a lot going on in Maryland. The good news is we don't have to do anything right now, but we want you to know, and LaNissir, I'm so grateful for your leadership and your vision here. As you've all heard from the people here, we are watching this closely, take it seriously, and we'll be providing updates as soon as they become needed.
I love that. I love that. And of course, they could go to hslda.org, right? Is that how they can reach you and stay connected? Yes, hslda.org. They have a whole page on Maryland, and there's opportunity.
hslda.org/Maryland. You can find out everything we've been working on.
There you go. I love it. And we encourage you. And MACHE also has a discount code for you guys who are not HSLDA members. I think it's more important now today than ever before that we all stay connected. Well, without further ado, I get a chance to kind of bring everybody up at one time. It's exciting. And that way we can kind of just dialogue really quickly. And then they can give you a lot of their closing thoughts about what we've heard today. And that's what I love about all of these wonderful guests, is that they understand the importance of great communication. And I think the people need to understand what's going on and really get perspective. And all of you did a phenomenal job. I wish I had, I could cue the music, right? To thank you so much. You guys are invested in your stakeholders and what's going on here in the state of Maryland in terms of homeschooling. So I just want you to start thinking about your closing thoughts that you want to say to Maryland homeschoolers. We're going to see this, either they're watching live now, and if you have questions, people are pretty quiet in the chat. If you have questions, you can post your questions, or that they can kind of look back and say, okay, Delegate Arikan's closing thought was this, and Gary Cox's closing thought, Pastor Gary Cox's closing thought was this, and Will Estrada. So we want to hear from you. So Delegate Arikan, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm love to be a member of this dream team. I really appreciate all of you and the work that you guys do to protect homeschooling. families like mine. So it's really important work. And really what I want people to know is that we're on it. We're not going to let you down. We're watching it like hawks. And, as time moves forward, as we get into session, certainly no one will be watching closer than the four of us as to what is going to be coming down the pike in terms of potential legislation and any type of rulemaking that they attempt to do. You guys will be at the top of the list of finding out. And we may have to rally the troops like we did a couple years ago when they tried to create that silly board that was going to oversee homeschooling. We absolutely, I don't know if folks know, but that bill that we activated on became the most searched bill of session on the state website. So you guys are all amazing. All those homeschool families, we have a fire in our belly, and that's probably why they leave us alone, because in the world of advocacy, it's actually very hard to get people activated and motivated, but no one is more motivated than a man or woman who has decided to keep their children home all day with them and teach them themselves. So we are born with the fire and they can't put it out. So I'm here for it. I'm looking forward to hopefully having a quiet session where they don't bother us at all. That would certainly behoove them. But if they do try to poke the bear, just know that there are thousands of mama and papa bear homeschool families out there that are ready to activate, and we won't let you down.
I love that. I love that. Maryland has over 40,000 homeschoolers, right? In 23 plus counties, plus one city. There's a lot of us here. And so it's exciting. And we appreciate you, Delegate Arikan. We're actually starting a MACHE ambassador program. So we're going to be bringing up students even before our Capital Day in March. And we can't wait to see you. And thank you for your hard work. And
I love that.
Some rest before January starts off. But yeah,
that's a great program. I will say also, make sure that homeschool kids, maybe we should figure out how to get them connected in with the internship programs. Yes. Because we have internship programs where they can actually get paid to be interns in Annapolis. So maybe you and I can talk offline about how we might be able to funnel more of our students into that program.
That would be great. Thank you, Delegate Arikan.
Yeah.
All right, Gary Cox, what would you like to say? What's your closing thoughts for everybody here today?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the long history that we've had in Maryland that has been leading the way. I forgot to mention about this unschooling thing. Manfred Smith was probably the original homeschooler in Maryland. And we've had such a good relationship with him over the years, working together. The most important liberties in the current regulation came about from Manfred's insistence, such as the nature of the portfolio views, the location, all that. And so there are some good roots to this. And it's, for me, I'm excited to see the younger generation taking over here and picking up the banner and waving it high. I really love the idea of your ambassador program. We've been doing that in our school program for years. And we actually gave up on trying to be involved with the local intern program because the way it was set up, each county has selection from the different schools, and they're actually voted in by school members, whatever. So we were never able to get any of our students elected. So we've done a lot of the work ourselves and had our own legislative interns, which we enjoy having. My oldest boy was the first one, Dan Cox. Actually, he was a member in the House with you back in prior to his run for governor. But reality is there's a lot of work. There's about 2,500 bills a year in Annapolis or more. And the system of sorting them, it's wonderful online now, but back when we started with Dan, there was I couldn't afford the online system. So I had to literally have all the bills mailed to our house, and a part of Daniel's social study classes in junior high was reading all of Maryland legislation and sorting it for me so I could take action on what was needed. So it's been a long time. Mike Smith was in your shoes back in the time that we were first getting started, and often it would be Dan, me, and Mike Smith walking Annapolis streets and going to a hearing or what have you. So we're really thankful for the vigorous, robust new generation of homeschool support. I really appreciate that, and I guess LaNissir offline too. I'd like to see potentially how we can work with you in that particular program. We've enjoyed placing some interns, but we've had to do them privately, and it's been a great success. But yes, keep the banner high, and the other thing is keep the clarity real. And so, what just like to make a quick comment on the way this published things went on. That the letter that was written September 18th simply was getting permission on September 18th to publish the report. After that meeting, apparently the report's published. The reality is the schedule for hearing is just a general schedule. There's no particular bills that are submitted right now to have testimony on, as well said, but paying attention. So you can go online, each of you, and find the Maryland Register from the Maryland website, Maryland State website, and every edition is on there, and you can click on any edition, and it's really interactive now. So you can go down to section 13A, which will always be the one about the Board of Education, and you can click on each one to see what's going on each month. But it's important to recognize that's the primary legal tool for processing change of law, change of regulation. So during the General Assembly, it gets really robust because every piece of legislation in Annapolis gets published in the review, and that's a lot. But it takes eternal vigilance, and the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And I'm just glad to see a younger generation picking up the banner, and I realize I don't have much longer that I can hold the banner as time goes on. So God bless. Thanks for having me.
God bless you, and thank you for all your hard work. And without further ado, Will Estrada.
I think the others have said it just as well or better than I could say it. We need to stand together. So whether it's just a very small regulatory change or whether this is a pretext for massive changes that could be issued that would try and regulate and restrict homeschool freedom, I encourage you to join MACHE, join HSLDA, make sure you're receiving our emails, make sure you're on our social media streams, and we will be watching and joining with our allies that you've seen here to stand up for homeschool freedom.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for everybody watching today. We want to thank our wonderful guests for being here. We thank God for you, Delegate Lauren Arikan, and all your hard work in Hartford and Baltimore County. We appreciate you. And Pastor Gary Cox and all of your hard work and the history that you have laid before the state of Maryland. We are so forever grateful. And of course, Will Estrada, for your hard and amazing on-time work at HSLDA and caring so much for the homeschool freedoms, not only in Maryland, but nationwide. I want to thank you all for watching. I'm LaNissir James from MACHE, the Maryland Association of Christian Home Educators. You have been a part of the call. We call it Homeschool Freedom. We call it Maryland Homeschool Freedom Talk. And so thank you for being a part of our talk today. God bless you, and bye for now.
Thank you. Goodbye.